I need you to state your name for the record and then spell it for me so that my court reporter can get used to your diction.
Sure. My name is Mary Jenny Varghese, M-A-R-Y-J-E-N-N-Y, and my last name is V like Victor, A-R-U-G-H-E-S-E.
What do you do for a living?
I'm an internal medicine physician.
Can you briefly tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, starting at college, your education to become an internal medicine physician?
Sure. I graduated from medical school from St. Christopher's College of Medicine. Then I did my internal medicine residency at Mount Carmel West Hospital in Columbus, Ohio.
What year was that you did your residency?
It's from 2005 to 2008.
Thereafter, were you licensed as a physician in the state of Ohio?
Yes.
And what was your first job out of your residency?
Immediately out of residency, I started as a hospitalist with Columbus Inpatient Care.
All right. And is that a corporation of a group of doctors that contracts with Mount Carmel to take care of their patients?
Yes.
All right. And are you still with that group?
No.
Okay. Have you relocated to another state?
Yes.
What year was that?
It was last year in July of 2021.
All right. Were you so working and so employed? We're going to start with Danny Millett, M-O-L-L-E-T-T-E. Did you have occasion to at least be named as the attending doctor for a Danny Millett?
Yes.
Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what your involvement was in the care of Danny Millett?
I think from what I remember you sent me was that, for the records, was that I did the discharge summary for him.
All right. Can you see in those medical records that you were sent for review, and for the record, I just sent her a copy of Mr. Millett's admission. Who is the listed attending physician?
It is me.
All right. Did you see Mr. Millett at all during his hospitalization?
No.
Why then are you listed as the attending?
Within our group, we have assignments. For example, there's a number 1, 2, and 3 attending with our hospitalist group. And apparently that week, I was the CIC 1 doctor. And so at times, my name is listed at the top of every single patient that's admitted that day. So usually the next day, we pick up the patient and then change the attending if we are not whoever is assuming the care of the patient.
Did that happen in this case?
No, unfortunately, Mr. Millett didn't make it to the next day.
All right. If you did not see him or take part of his care in any way other than being automatically assigned as the attending, why then did you write the discharge summary?
So at times, well, all discharge summaries are sent to our medical record inbox. And for some reason, I did the discharge summary because, well, I did it as a courtesy because it came to me because I was listed as the attending. And as a courtesy to my partner, I did the discharge summary so that it wouldn't continue to stay in the wrong inbox and become delinquent.
All right. Who was your partner that you were doing this for?
Dr. Thurston.
Had Dr. Thurston, to your knowledge, or upon your review of the records, had he seen Mr. Millett the day before?
He did the history and physical, so yes.
What do you mean by become delinquent?
We have requirements within the health system that if you do not complete your documentation or medical records for each patient within a certain number of days, 1 week to 10 days, that can be added to your file and you can get fines or you can lose your privileges within the hospital.
All right. So you prepared this, you said, as a courtesy to Dr. Thurston, and so that it would not become delinquent. Tell the folks about the process of preparing the discharge summary for Mr. Millett.
So initially I review the chart, I review the history and physical, and then I review the progress notes, and then I make a small summary of what those events were, and then I send it to the primary care physician of the patient.
Okay. Are any of those fields that are in the discharge summary, are any of those auto-populated?
Yes.
What fields are auto-populated in the discharge summary?
The admission date, medications, I'm reviewing them as you speak, so I'm looking at that right now. The discharge lab results, and any follow-up appointments or discharge instructions for the patient and the time it took to complete all of this.
Is it fair to call this document, as you begin it, a template?
Yes, it's a template that we fill in.
Okay. What, if any, review of the medication administration record for Danny Millett's hospital course did you review in preparing the discharge summary?
None.
And why not?
For a patient who passes, the most important thing is to write down the initial reason for admission, and then what the diagnosis was for them on admission and what happened to them that caused their death. Specifically, their medical events or the events that occurred during the hospital stay. Unless it was a long hospital stay that the patient required multiple antibiotics that I needed a primary care to follow up on, or if there were specific medication changes, then I would review the medications and make it clear that the primary care should follow up on these changes.
But when someone passes at the hospital, is that necessary at all?
Not in this case, no.
Okay. So regardless of you're not reviewing the medication administration records, were you otherwise aware of any of the medication that Mr. Millett received during palliative extubation when you prepared your discharge summary?
No.
All right. And then does your note indicate that you signed the death certificate, or did you do something else regarding the death certificate?
No, I indicated that I sent the death certificate, or it should be sent to Dr. Thurston.
Thank you. Let's talk about Ryan Hayes, please. In 2017, did you have occasion to document anything regarding the admission of Ryan Hayes between April 2nd and April 4th?
I was the supervising attending for the medicine clinic, which is the resident-run service at that time, and I saw him after his admission. So I did not see him on the day of admission for the history and physical for the initial evaluation, but I did see him with the resident supervising the resident's care on the second day.
All right, and did you make a note about this consultation in those medical records?
Yes, I noted that I was the attending and that I agreed with the plan and the documentation by the resident.
All right, and this is while Mr. Hayes was still alive in the hospital?
While he was in the hospital, yes.
All right, and did you, what if anything, did you agree with that you observed the attending observing?
Is there a specific part of, what do you mean?
What was his condition when you saw Ryan Hayes?
So I'm going to review the history. The initial history and physical stated that he arrived with out-of-hospital cardiac arrest, where they did not know the reason for it. He was in hypoxic respiratory failure. He had encephalopathy, which means that he was not alert. He was in shock they thought it was cardiogenic shock and possibly an overdose. On arrival, they made it clear that he had a CAT scan of his brain and it had swelling, and so the initial thought was he had brain injury secondary to low oxygen for a long period of time.
And this is corresponding with your actual observations of Ryan Hayes, or do the medical records indicate that this corresponds with your actual observations?
So the second day when I wrote the progress note, I did examine him while he was in the ICU. I wasn't the primary provider for him in the ICU. In the ICU, I would be a attending that would come by and just check on the patient that's there and then take over the care once they leave the ICU. So I reviewed the note by the resident, and I did notice that his pupils were fixed and dilated. I'm trying to find that note. I'm sorry, one second. Do you have that note? Okay, I found it. I basically, I listed that I agreed with the resident's assessment, physical findings and plan, and we discussed the diagnosis and the treatment plans. I stated that the pupils were fixed and dilated, and there was notes about the family's wishes, and they were waiting for the son of the patient to arrive. So the patient was on life support to keep perfusion flowing through his body, and they were waiting for Loop to come and harvest his organs.
Loop, is that the word you used?
Yeah, it's the service that for organ transplantation.
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly the exact what LOOP stands for exactly.
Okay. Did you see Mr. Hayes at all afterwards during his hospital stay, besides watching a student doctor examine him in your examination? Besides that, did you have anything else to do with Ryan Hayes while he was still alive in the hospital?
No.
All right. Did you thereafter write the discharge summary yourself?
I did not write all of the discharge summary. I co-signed it and stated that I agreed with the resident's discharge summary.
Okay. And as part of your or the resident as his supervisor, did you or did the resident review the medications that were given to Mr. Hayes during his palliative extubation in the evening hours of April 3rd going into April 4th of 2017?
Objection, we don't.
Okay, sustained. Doctor, well, the speculation on the other doctor, I assume, is the objection.
Yes, sir.
Did you review those?
Yes, I did not.
Can you speak to us whether you have knowledge of the other doctor that you're supervising and teaching? Do you have knowledge whether he reviewed those?
I do not know.
Okay. Would you have taught him to do that in this case?
Not for the palliative extubation, no.
All right. And when you co-signed on this, did you have otherwise any knowledge of the either opioid pain medication or benzodiazepines that were given to Ryan Hayes during his palliative extubation?
No.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Cross?
Yeah, no problem. Just the pages for those things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Dr. Varghese.
Good afternoon.
Doctor, can you see what I'll refer to as Joint Exhibit 4, pages 6 through 9? Dr. Varghese, is this a discharge summary you were just discussing regarding Mr. Millett?
Yes.
Doctor, I know you didn't see Mr. Millett, so I'm going to keep this very brief in regards to him. There's been some testimony as to his family having witnessed him suffer numerous arrests when he was at the hospital. I just want to direct your attention to what was written in that second to last line regarding what the family stated. You see that there, Doctor?
I'm here.
Oh, do you see the line stating in your discharge summary that the family stated that Mr. Millett would not want CPR?
I think I must have written that by reading the records.
And that the patient continued to decline, and at that point his code status was changed to DNR-CC?
Yes, this is my summary that I wrote from reading the records.
And And the records you reviewed, just to go over them again briefly, was, I believe you mentioned his charting, his history and physical, and the progress notes.
Yes,
And based upon your review of those items, you agreed then that his situation continued to decline, which then led to his status being changed to comfort care?
yes,
And just to clarify, the goal of comfort care is not to try and treat someone's illnesses at that point, but rather to provide comfort.
To object, is this one questioning with this witness,
Okay,
foundation?
let's lay, I agree, lay the foundation, go ahead.
Doctor, do you know what DNRCC is?
yes.
When DNRCC, when that is the code, what does that mean?
It means do not resuscitate, comfort care only.
And what does comfort care mean to you, doctor?
Comfort care is where we look at the patient and their symptoms, and we treat their symptoms, not what their diagnosis is. We treat their pain or their shortness of breath, and whatever they feel, we are treating that.
And is that at that point because you want them to be comfortable as opposed to recover, because recovery is futile at that point?
Yes.
Doctor, I wanted to touch upon something you mentioned in regards to potentially these things becoming delinquent and why you did it as a courtesy to do Mr. Millett's discharge summary, okay? You mentioned the potential for fines and I believe loss of privileges if you were to essentially be punished for letting something like this become delinquent, right?
Yes.
And you're given, once you're assigned this, anywhere between a week to 10 days to complete it, correct?
Sure. Yes.
And that's based upon Mount Carmel's policies, right?
Yes.
Isn't it true that that same policy also requires you to ensure that the medical record is complete and that every note is signed and everything is correct in it?
The policy is for us to sign our history and physicals and to sign to do our progress notes within 24 hours and to do our discharge summaries within that time frame so that the information can be passed to the primary care at an appropriate time.
One second here. Having a bit of technical difficulties. 1 second, Your Honor. Would seeing the actual policy refresh your recollection as to whether you are required to review the entire record for its completeness once you're given this 10-day assignment?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. I don't believe she said she had any lack of memory as to what the policy was.
Okay.
Let's lay some foundation.
Of course, Your Honor. Dr. Varghese, do you recall whether you were required to have reviewed the entire record as part of that same policy you referenced before?
No, I don't know if that's part of the policy.
Would seeing that policy refresh your recollection as to whether it was?
Sure. I mean, the standard that we do is it's a discharge summary. So it is a summary of events that occurred within the hospital. So that is what we all use to complete our discharge summary.
Permission to refresh your recollection at this point?
She didn't answer the predicate question
I believe
first.
her response was sure. It would refresh her recollection, Your Honor.
I
And then
don't
she
think that's
continued.
what she said, but
Okay. Doctor, again, would it refresh your recollection as to whether you were required to review the entire record as part of that same policy you referred to before?
We don't look at policies and reread them every day, but if you think it's necessary, I can see it, that's fine.
okay, well, you still got a problem.
Doctor, simply put, I know you don't review them every day, but would it refresh your recollection to see the rules and regulations?
Asked and answered.
I'll permit it.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, how are you gonna pull this off?
I'm going to have to share my screen, Your Honor.
Well, you can't. It's refreshing. She has to look at the document. It does not get published to the jury.
Can we black out that part, Judge?
I mean, we can't lose our constitutional rights to cross-examination because of a Zoom. We didn't stipulate to this being Zoom, Your Honor. We're just trying to do our best with the circumstances.
Okay, you have your constitutional right to confront, okay? The question is logistically, how do we do this? Can we send it to her to review outside their presence? Because your confrontational rights have nothing to do with the rules of evidence there in that situation.
Real quick.
I don't have her email address.
Email it to Louis Gobble and see if he'll email it. He's in the courtroom. I mean, I'm trying to help here.
I know. It's fine.
Yeah, send it to one of us, and we'll email.
All right. We'll move on, Your Honor. It's just going to delay the process. Okay. Let's move on to Mr. Hayes. Okay, doctor?
Okay.
Doctor, can you see this as your discharge summary that you wrote for Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
This would be Joint Exhibit 2, pages 9 to 11. Okay, doctor. You mentioned that he had brain swelling, correct?
Yes.
Now, when someone's brain is swelling, that is an increase of pressure in their cranium, correct?
It depends. It's a radiographic identification. I'm not a radiologist, so I can't necessarily say if the pressure was high. The only way for you to know if the pressure is high is by checking the pressures directly.
Doctor, do you know who did the death certificate for Mr. Hayes?
From what I was told, I think it was the coroner.
And you're not aware of the contents of what was listed as the cause of death by that coroner, are you?
No.
Doctor, you see here, this is the progress note you were referencing before. This is same exhibit, joint 2, pages 28 to 32. Do you see your name there, doctor?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just going to go to the end where the portion you were referencing before about how you agreed with what the attending or the other physician had written, okay?
Yes.
That's what you were referring to before?
Yes.
And you see there at the end of the at the end of the I can't pronounce that doctor's name, Vachani, is that correct?
Vachani.
Vachani, thank you. Sam, it's Vachhani. Do you see the prognosis there?
Yes.
And you see how it says terminal?
Yes.
And you agreed with that, the fact that Mr. Hayes was terminal?
Yes.
And you see there how there's a reference to the family's plans of withdrawal care when the son arrives to the hospital?
Yes.
And one last question, a few last questions actually, I don't want to put myself in that hole. Doctor, in regards to Mr. Millett and Mr. Hayes, you reviewed what you felt was necessary to write the discharge summary and make it complete and accurate, correct?
Yes.
You knew that both of these patients went through a terminal vent withdrawal, correct?
Yes.
And you're aware that with the conditions they had, that they were having life support removed, correct?
Yes.
And after knowing that, you felt comfortable putting in these documents what caused their death, right?
Yes.
With the conditions in your experience, doctor, with the conditions that Mr. Millett and Mr. Hayes had, would they have survived when the life support was removed?
Objection, Your Honor. Sustained.
When someone has life support and then life support is removed, in your experience, what occurs, doctor?
It's different for every patient.
Okay, Next question.
Yeah.
Hold on, we need a new question.
Okay. Doctor, you saw there in both Mr. Millett and Mr. Hayes' records that the patient's power of attorney or family decided to withdraw care, right, in both cases?
Yes.
Now, in regards to urgency or anything of that nature, when a power of attorney or a patient's family says stop and stop caring for them, withdraw life support, you have to do it, right?
When we discuss the plan of care, we discuss it with families, and we always ask for their wishes. And there's always it's not that we have to do it, of course, it's the patient's wishes. So the family is the voice of the patient. And so our job is to do what's the patient's wishes, and the closest person to them is their power of attorney. And so, yes, we do whatever the patient's wishes are from the POA's voice.
And just to clarify, from the POA's voice, with the patient's wishes, you can't defy those wishes, right?
No, our goal is to do whatever the patient would want.
And you do that when you know what the patient wants, right?
Yes.
You don't wait, do you?
I mean, we don't wait around. I mean, we have all the, I don't understand the question. When you mean wait, what do you mean by that?
I'll give you, in your experience, if a family member or a power of attorney of a patient says, this patient's wishes are not to have life support anymore, you don't take your time honoring those wishes, right? You do it right then.
It depends. Like for one of these cases, they were waiting for family to arrive. So in cases where they ask us to wait, yes. Otherwise, we do it when we have, all the staff involved and everybody around them ready. And when the family is ready, we set up a time and we do it in a way that is as, as appropriate as can be for the family.
Understood. And if the family wants it done then, you do it then, right?
Yes.
You don't wait till morning, till they, so they can reflect and have a fresher day in the broad daylight?
It depends on the family. We ask the family their wishes, and what they prefer, we do.
Doctor, I'm going to make it very simple. If they want to get it done at night, you don't just decide on your own volition to do it in the morning, right? You do it when they want.
Yes, you do it when they want.
Thank you.
Redirect. I assume you're done?
Yes, Your Honor.
So doctor, just following up on that last question, in your experience, are palliative extubations an emergency situation requiring emergency protocols with medication, et cetera?
It depends on the family request.
Okay. Regardless of whatever the Mount Carmel policy says, in preparing the two discharge summaries in this case, did you review or are you aware of any of the medication that either one of these patients received at the time of their palliative extubation?
No.
Goal of comfort care, remember that line of questioning on cross-examination there?
Yes.
You said was to treat their pain and whatever they are feeling. Remember that?
Yes.
If it has been determined that a patient cannot clinically feel pain or experience anxiety, is there any reason in your experience to give them opioid pain medication and benzodiazepines?
Objection. There's not a single patient in this case that happens.
Sustained. Do you want it on the side?
Did you review Ryan Hayes' condition and when you saw him? Remember that?
Yes.
All right. You said his pupils were fixed and dilated?
Objection.
Yes.
Now we need to go sidewalk.
Okay.
A moment,
Ladies and
doctor.
gentlemen. Ms. Schaefer, please. Objection sustained. Next question, sir.
Doctor, when you observed Ryan Hayes, remember, that's what I was asking about, and his eyes were fixed and dilated? You said that?
Yes.
Did you observe anything to you that would indicate that he was in any pain or experiencing any anxiety?
My evaluation was not to evaluate his symptoms at that time. I was checking to see what his status was on what the diagnosis was, because that's what they said that his admitting diagnosis was, that he had severe swelling within his brain. So that's why I checked that specific exam. I did not examine his symptoms at that time.
All right. And based on your observation, did you observe symptoms that were consistent with his admitting diagnosis?
I don't remember.
All right, fair enough. Thank you, I have nothing further.
Okay. Doctor, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to shut you off. Sorry to be like that, but. Okay. I got the call off. Darcy and I are making sure we're doing this right since Paul entrusted us. We're still not back to where we got to take the video conference off. There we are. Okay. Call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state of Ohio calls Andrew Scherzinger.
Okay. Come on down. Make your way through our little obstacle course, so to speak. Okay, I need you to raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay, go ahead and make yourself comfortable. We've got an aerial mic there in front of you, okay? I need you to state your name and spell it for my court reporter so she can get used to your voice.
Okay. First name is Andrew, A-N-D-R-E-W.
Okay, Andrew, I know you got more than that,
All right.
okay? We need a little bit more buy-in because we got all this plexiglass around here, makes it tough to hear sometimes, so we
Okay.
need you to speak up.
Okay. First name is Andrew, A-N-D-R-E-W. Last name is Scherzinger, S-C-H-I-R-T-Z-I-N-G-E-R.
Okay, can you all hear him okay? Okay, Ms. Grubb.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, everyone. Andy, I'm going to give you a picture and ask you to look at it. It's labeled State's Exhibit 3A.
It's my mother.
May I publish, Your Honor?
Any objection? Go ahead.
Andy, what does this picture depict?
That's my mother. She was a very loving person, loved her 3 kids.
Okay, we'll get to that in just a second. Do you know when this picture was taken?
I don't recall now.
Okay, thank you. Andy, do you live and work in Central Ohio?
Yes, ma'am.
And are you Beverly's son?
That's correct.
Okay. Tell us about your mom as a person and a mother.
She's a very loving mom. Got 3 kids, me and my 2 sisters. Loved her grandkids. Love flower bedding, going on family vacations.
Okay. Talk to me a little bit about your family configuration. Where did you land in the birth order?
I was a middle child,
Okay,
yeah, so. yeah, I
older
always-
sister and younger sister?
Yeah, I always got tormented.
Okay. And is your dad still living?
No, ma'am.
When did your dad pass?
He passed August of 2016.
Where were you living at the time that your dad passed away?
I was living in my parents' house.
Okay. And after your dad passed away, did you continue living there with your mother?
Yes, ma'am.
And for how long?
Just a couple months.
Okay. And then where did you move to?
My residence now in Orient.
Okay, you're living in Orient.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you work here in Central Ohio?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we don't need to know where. And did you continue to enjoy a relationship with your mom after you moved out?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
How would you characterize that relationship?
She'd text me every morning. Good morning. Text me every night. Good night. Very close. We'd go over on the weekends or what evenings I had to be available. Went to the store for her. She's there for her.
Okay. And was your mother the type of person that would share all of her problems with her kids?
No, ma'am.
And did you know anything about any of her health problems?
Just her back. She had a bad back.
Do you know anything in particular about any medications she might have been taking for her back?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Do you remember any medical appointments or hospitalizations that she went through prior to October of 2017?
No, not that I can recall.
Do you remember her hospitalization of October 2nd through the 9th of 2017?
I do.
Did your mom in fact pass away during that hospitalization?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know why your mom went to the hospital?
Yes, ma'am.
What was that?
We had went to the store, I believe it was the 2nd of October. She needed just bread, eggs, milk. Went to the store, dropped her off, asked her if she needed a hand putting it away. I carried it in for her. It was raining that night. Went home, went to bed, and I got a phone call the next day that she had slipped and fell at home on the wet floor. And she was worried about a blood clot, because that is what my father passed away from. So she went to the emergency room at Mount Carmel, Grove City.
Okay. And do you know what happened there?
Yeah, at that point, they went ahead and checked her. She did not have a blood clot, but they spotted some spots or a spot on her lungs and her liver.
Okay. And what happened as a result of that?
They wanted to do further testing, so they went ahead and took her to Mount Carmel West.
Okay, thank you. Now, while she was there, did she receive any visitors?
Yes, ma'am.
Who visited your mom while she was in the hospital?
Me and my 2 sisters.
And where do the 2 sisters reside?
My older sister is here locally in Grove City. My younger sister lives in Florida.
And I take it then that the younger sister traveled here to visit at the hospital?
Yes, ma'am. It took her a while to get up here.
Okay. How often did you and or your siblings go to visit your mom?
Every day. It might not have been all day, but we would pop in and see how she's doing.
Okay. Who was there most?
I don't recall.
Okay. Was anyone among the 3 of you helping your mom navigate the medical system and talk to the doctors and nurses?
No.
Who was mainly talking to the doctors and nurses?
Just whoever was there, and then we would go ahead and pass the information along to the other siblings.
Okay. Was your mom conversant with the healthcare professionals that were coming in to see her and treat her?
Such as talking to them?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So how many days of the hospitalization was she able to carry on a conversation and discuss her care?
All the way up until her surgery.
Okay. As the days progressed, did you come to any understanding about what her problems were?
No, I didn't.
Was she in any pain leading up to the last day in the hospital?
No, ma'am, she didn't seem like it.
Was there a day where the doctors took her for an invasive test?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Was there a day where she went for a test?
Not that I'm aware of.
Does the word biopsy help?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was there a day where she had a biopsy?
Yep, yes, ma'am.
Was that the day she passed away?
That's correct.
Do you remember what time of day that test was?
I believe it was around noon.
Did you come to the hospital that day?
Yes, ma'am.
And what time did you arrive?
Roughly 1:30 in the afternoon.
Where was your mom at that time?
They were actually asked me to leave her room, that they were wheeling her in.
Okay. Do you believe that the test had been accomplished at that point?
It seemed like it, yes.
Okay. Upon your mom's arrival, was she able to talk with you?
Yes.
And without saying what she said specifically to you, was she expressing anything about her condition at that point?
She was in a lot of pain.
Okay. Did she let anybody know what on her body hurt?
It was her back.
Any other parts?
No, ma'am.
Were there any other signs of distress that she exhibited?
No, not that I can recall.
Okay. Did she ever lose her stomach contents?
I don't believe so, no.
Was there a time when she coded?
Yes.
What happened when she coded?
Her eyes rolled back in her head. It went code blue. And yeah, everybody came to the room.
Okay. Now, when you say everybody, who was that?
It was a lot of nurses. She was all the way to the end of the hallway. I mean, they were running down the hallway, opening packages. Dr. Husel was there. Yeah, they performed CPR. Yeah.
So, looking around the courtroom, do you see Dr. Husel in the courtroom?
Yes, ma'am.
Is he over my left shoulder?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did Dr. Husel lead the code?
Yes, ma'am.
Did anyone discuss with you any of the medications or other procedures that were being used at that time to help your mom?
No, ma'am.
Were you in the room during the code or out of the room?
I was in a doorway.
Okay. And were you viewing the whole episode?
The whole thing.
Okay. Did you, when the code was over, what did you do?
Well, they asked us to meet them down in the ICU waiting area. Excuse me. And a nurse will meet us down there. And they went ahead and took my mom.
Okay. Was your mom intubated? Did she have a tube down her throat when the code occurred?
Yes, ma'am. At the code? No,
Yeah.
she did not.
Okay, all right. And when was the next time you saw your mom?
In the ICU area.
And were you allowed to go back into her room?
Yes, we were. Once they got her back there, yes.
Okay, and what did you find going on with your mom when you next saw her?
She was laying there, hooked up to machines. Yeah, I mean, she was just laying there. She didn't seem like she could talk. Yeah, she was.
Okay. Was she intubated at that point?
Yes, ma'am.
Did anybody tell you what all they were doing for her after the code?
No, they did not say.
Okay. Did anybody at any time discuss her blood pressure?
No.
Was there a time when a young gentleman approached you in the waiting area to discuss your mother?
Yes, ma'am.
Who was that person?
I don't remember his name. I remember he was wearing green scrubs,
Okay.
shorter gentleman.
When you say shorter, I mean, I know you're a pretty tall guy. Would you estimate?
5'6", 5'8",
Okay.
roughly.
So not Dr. Husel?
No, ma'am.
It was not Dr. Husel, okay. Who was there for your family at that juncture?
When he came in, it was me, my two sisters, and my brother-in-law.
Okay. And what did you understand about what was going on with your mother?
That they had told us that her organs were shutting down, that she was in a vegetative state, she didn't have any brain activity, and they wanted to know what my mom's wishes were.
Did they use the term life support?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you presented with options for her care?
No, not at all.
What happened next?
At that point, me and my sisters had discussed what mom's wishes were, that she didn't want to be a vegetable the rest of her life. She didn't want to be a burden on us kids. At that point, the nurse said we need to make a decision, so we decided to pull the plug.
Okay. Do you remember whether or not you had an ability to go in and say goodbye?
Yeah, we did.
How long did you have to do that?
We were actually waiting on other family members to get there. That way they could say their last goodbyes also.
Okay.
So 30 minutes. They lived here locally in town.
Okay. Did you receive any pastoral care at that time?
I believe, yeah, he came in
How long was he there?
just a couple minutes.
Did anyone at that time offer you an explanation as far as why your mom had experienced such a sudden critical event?
No, ma'am.
Did you understand at that time what triggered her spiral?
I had no idea.
Do you know now?
I do know now.
What is that?
Apparently something happened during surgery, during her biopsy.
Was there any discussion with Dr. Husel about what to expect during the natural dying process?
No, ma'am.
Did you ever speak with Dr. Husel about the DNR or the dying process?
No, ma'am.
Was there a time after your mom passed that the hospital reached out to you?
After she passed, yes, ma'am.
How long after that? How long after she passed?
It was roughly a
Did you
year. It was
hear from
roughly a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was the nature of that contact?
To let us know that they're doing some investigating on my mom's death, and that was pretty much the phone call. He didn't have any information, but they would contact us at a later date.
Did you meet with them?
No,
Without saying what anybody told you, what was your understanding about what happened to your mom after those contacts?
Objection, Your Honor.
It's-
His understanding is literally the words that were said.
Okay, sustain, rephrase.
Andy, do you understand anything about what happened to your mom?
Then I did not, now I do.
Okay. Did you meet with the Columbus Police Homicide Squad?
Yes, ma'am,
How many times did you meet with them?
just once.
Did you know me or meet me prior to last week?
No,
Has anyone in your family secured civil counsel to address your mom's hospital experience?
yes, ma'am.
We have no further questions on direct.
Ross?
Thanks, Andy.
Cross?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Diane Menashe on behalf of Dr. William Husel. I have some questions that I want to go back over with you, and then some other questions about the hospital experience that you just mentioned. Fair to say that prior to coming into the hospital, and your mother came in on 10/2/2017, does that sound correct?
Sounds correct, yes, ma'am.
And she was in the hospital at Mount Carmel West until 10/9/17,
Correct.
so a week.
Yes, ma'am.
Prior to coming into the hospital on 10/2/17, fair to say that although you were close to your mom as her son, she kept from you her serious health conditions.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's your understanding then that the reason that you went into the hospital was really because of a slip and fall.
Correct.
And now, with this time passing and you getting so much additional information, you realize that when your mother went into the hospital on 10/2/2017, she was actually quite sick.
As far as I know, she just slipped and fell.
No, but now,
As far as,
well, let's talk about,
I'm sorry.
let's talk about the biopsy.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You now know that your mother had a biopsy of her liver
Yes, ma'am.
when she was at Mount Carmel West.
Correct.
And that biopsy of the liver was not done by my client, Dr. William Husel, correct?
I'm not sure who did it.
Okay, but she wasn't in the ICU when she had the biopsy.
Correct, yes, ma'am. Yes.
So let's go back to pre-ICU, when she's at Mount Carmel West. She has a biopsy of her liver,
Mhm.
and you now know that as a result of the biopsy, she bled out.
I do know that now, yes.
And what happened when she bled out was her blood pressure dropped.
Correct.
When that blood pressure dropped, she covered.
Object, not the record.
If you know, do you know?
If you know.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I would imagine it did. I mean,
Well, let me walk you through then. Maybe I should have started here. The experience that you talked about with your mother, has anyone ever actually shared with you as her son your mother's medical records
no, ma'am.
from the visit? And this is just from the 2-week visit. I think there's 2 binders. Your Honor, one moment. I want to make sure that they're not there. Here's just one binder for your mother. And I want to show you so you don't have to take my word for it. These are double-sided pages.
Okay.
Has anyone ever offered these records to you?
No, ma'am.
Has your civil attorney hasn't offered them to you?
No, not, no.
The prosecution didn't offer them to you?
No.
Mount Carmel West didn't offer them to you? But you would agree with me, right? Just common sense, that these records aren't influenced by things like the police, correct?
I'm not sure if they are. I don't know.
Well, you would agree that medical records tell the story of what happened to someone while they were.
Object, Your Honor. No indication that he knows what's a medical record.
Lay some foundation with it.
When you go to the doctor's office, have you ever been hospitalized?
Yes.
And that hospital is that during that hospitalization, what happened to you? The meds you were given, the doctors that saw you, that there were notes that memorialized your treatment.
Correct.
But you've never taken a look at the volume of medical records
Asked and answered, Your Honor.
for your mother, Steph.
I'll permit the question.
Is that right?
No, I have not looked at them.
Okay, so I want to talk then about the code you mentioned. Since you aren't familiar with her, are you familiar with the fact that the biopsy came back and she had both liver and lung cancer?
I just found that out.
Okay. So the code that she experienced, that was, if you know, when her blood pressure dropped after the biopsy, right?
Yes.
And you witnessed that code?
I can't say I witnessed it, no. I did not see it. I was there for the code, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I heard on direct that you saw the whole code.
Yes, ma'am, I saw it, yes, but I didn't know if you were asking if I saw the blood pressure drop.
No, you saw the coding process.
Yes, ma'am.
The nurses running down the hospital.
Yes, ma'am.
Trying to save your mother who was actively dying.
That's correct.
Object, there's no indication at that time that she was actively
Wow.
dying.
I'll permit the question.
Let me ask you. Put this case aside. Code, as you were there in that hospital, and you saw those nurses running, you knew, did you not, what was going on with her mom?
I did not know at the time. I know she coded,
You knew she coded.
Correct.
And coded to you means what?
that she lost oxygen, that she's needing CPR.
And from your experience, you get CPR, right, when you can no longer breathe.
That's correct.
Okay. So she's coding and no longer breathing. Does it sound right that the code happened at 21:56 on October 9th of 2017?
That sounds correct.
And it happened on the ICU floor, did it not?
The code?
Yes.
It did not.
But what did happen is that the doctor that was leading the code to save your mom's life was Dr. Williams.
That's correct.
He intubates her, because you saw it, right?
She was intubated when I saw her when she was on the ICU floor.
Okay, so, and I want to be clear, because I'm sitting over there and maybe I misheard. I thought I heard you say you saw the whole code.
Correct. Correct.
So you saw that at 21:56 that she was being given medications. Not that you knew that they were vasopressors, just that she's being given medications. Did you
Yes.
see that?
Yes, ma'am.
And at the time, when she's being given medications in a code, fair to say no doctor or nurse is stopping the code, turning to you and say, am I allowed to max out your mother on vasopressors right now? No one's-
Object, again, Your Honor,
Stand.
not the record.
Right. No one asks you when they're giving her life-saving measures. They just did it, right?
That's correct.
And then you must have watched when her blood pressure dropped further, right? And then she's given even more medicine because the situation is so critical. Do you remember this?
Yes, ma'am.
And it went on, it being the code, for a substantial, for 5, 6, 7 minutes. Does that sound right?
Yes,
And it must have felt, did it feel like a lifetime?
it did.
But she was saved. Right? She was brought back.
Yes, she was given CPR.
Who gave the CPR? Do you remember?
It was to the guy nurses that was giving her medication.
And those male nurses, tall?
One of them was fairly short. It was the gentleman that met me and my sisters in the ICU waiting area. The other guy was fairly tall.
Okay. But it was 2 men that were giving chest compressions to your mother in an event to save her life.
Correct, the same gentleman that was giving her medication.
And so we're clear also, one of the men that was giving her CPR was also giving her medication?
They were both giving her medication, and they were both doing CPR, correct?
And lots of people around at this time during the code?
Yes, ma'am.
And is one of those male nurses the individual you described to the police and in another proceeding as being the man in green scrubs?
Correct.
And to this day, as you sit here, do you know the name of the man in green scrubs?
I know one of the gentlemen that was in the green scrubs.
And so you must have learned that name after October of 2020. Does that sound right?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yes. You must have learned the name of the man in green scrubs after 2020, October of 2020. Does that sound right?
No, I remember his name.
Okay. Do you remember giving a deposition in relation to your civil case?
Yes.
Do you remember saying, no idea what his name was? It was a younger guy with dark hair. I believe he was in green scrubs.
I don't recall saying, I don't remember his name, but yes, I do remember his name very vaguely.
Okay. Would it refresh your recollection to look at your deposition testimony to see what you said on October 1st of 2020?
Yes, ma'am.
May I approach your house?
Okay.
I have that. I have it. No need to read it out loud.
Yes, ma'am.
Does that refresh your recollection that at your sworn testimony on October 1st of 2020, you indicated you didn't know his name?
Yes,
Now do you know his name?
I do.
And what's his name?
Troy.
Troy what?
I don't know his last name.
Did at any point in time anyone show you, anyone from the prosecutor's office or Mount Carmel or the police department, show you pictures to determine who the nurses were?
No, ma'am.
Have you asked? I'd like to figure out who these nurses are.
No.
At any point in time, were you made aware that actually, after your mother had the liver biopsy and she was bleeding out, that there was a doctor named Dr. Manjan that was paged multiple times and didn't respond to the page? Were you ever told that?
No, ma'am.
Were you ever told, or did you ever learn throughout all of your time on this case, with your lawyer or through the prosecutor's office, that when Dr. Manjan finally did respond, that to respond to the issues your mother was having, he gave her sodium water and nausea medication,
I don't remember that.
and then she coded?
I don't recall.
If I understand it, you are not the durable power of attorney for your mother, is that correct?
That's correct.
Your sister is.
That's correct.
And so, and I say that as no disrespect, I understand that you're a family member, but as the durable power of attorney, your sister, did she not have conversations with your mother about how your mother wished to?
Object. That's for double years.
I understand what the thing is, it's her objective here. Let's tighten the question up a little bit about his understanding.
Your understanding, your sister, I'm not going to ask you what was said, but your sister had conversations with your mother about whether or not she would want to be on a ventilator. Did she not?
I don't recall that conversation, no.
Do you know if they had them, though? That's her question.
I don't know if they had it or not. I don't know.
Okay. Okay, I'll find that in just a second. I want to go back to your testimony about the chaplain. And I'm bouncing around a little bit, but it's the afternoon and there's a significant amount to cover. You indicated that the chaplain, I think you said stopped down. Or do you remember that, or stopped in?
Stopped in, yes, ma'am.
Stopped in. Thank you for clarifying that. So I'm just curious. A chaplain note that the chaplain spent 90 minutes of spiritual care time with you and your family, and then an additional 150 minutes of spiritual care time with you and your family. Would those notes be inaccurate?
I don't recall him spending that much time, no.
But you do recall that it was a male spiritual care provider?
Yes, ma'am.
One moment, I need to count. back to some things that you said on direct examination. With respect to Dr. Husel, know that you saw him at the code. You were asked on direct a number of questions about when the family, or your sister, because she was the POA, made the decision to palliatively extubate your sister. Do you remember those lines of questions?
Yes,
And in the question itself, and in your answer, you were using the word they. They said, they said, they said. Do you remember that?
I said they.
Yes.
I don't recall that.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this.
Yes, ma'am.
You, in your interview with CPD, and then later when you were questioned about this case in October of 2001, you indicated both times that the only time that you ever saw Dr. Husel was in that code.
That's correct.
So when you were being asked questions on direct about the conversation you had with Mount Carmel West doctors and/or nurses about end of care, those conversations were not with Dr. Husel.
No, ma'am.
And you know that.
Yes, ma'am.
You've been sure of that.
Yes, ma'am.
And if it was Dr. Husel, you have a visual of him because you walked into that code room and wasn't he at the head of the bed of your mother?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm assuming that's a visual you can't forget.
Yes, ma'am.
So, with respect to the discussions that were had with your family, I just want to make sure again, you were there, your two sisters were there, and your brother-in-law was also there.
Yes, ma'am.
And your mother had been in that hospital, I know, for 7 days. And so, and I'm sorry, I wanted to date this. The date of her passing is the 9th, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And if it sounds about right, she went to the ICU the day that she coded, was May 1st.
Was,
Objection.
Let me, no, we don't need to approach. Do you remember the date on which she coded? Oh, I'm sorry, it was the 9th when she coded. The same day when she passed.
October 9th.
Yes.
Yes,
sorry.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Her objection was you said May.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you said May 1st.
Oh, sorry. It was on the 9th, right?
October, yes, ma'am.
October. And obviously in the ICU at that point in time, and that's when you and your two sisters and your brother-in-law. right?
Brother-in-law, yes.
Those were they not the family, an extended family that had been called to come for your mother, right?
Correct.
You were there together.
Yes, ma'am.
Everybody had time to gather.
Correct.
And when there was conversations about end-of-life care and what the family's wishes were, you had time as a family, I heard you say this on direct, that you talked about it, about what your mother would want.
Yes, ma'am.
And as her son, you knew at that moment that you're not speaking for yourself, right?
Correct.
Amy, I think is your sister's name?
Yes, ma'am.
Amy's not speaking for what Amy wants or anyone else, but I'm assuming, and tell me if I'm wrong, but at that moment, you're trying to do what your mom would want.
Correct.
And it's with that care and compassion and knowing your mom that you as a family, and then ultimately your sister, make the determination to palliatively extubate your mom.
That's correct.
And you were all able to be there together with her?
Yes, ma'am.
And after her passing, the first time, rather, that you ever think something might have gone wrong is when you get the call from Mount Carmel.
Yeah, something seemed like something went wrong, but we just figured it was her time.
And because you know from your everyday experience, right, that life can be fleeting.
Yes, ma'am.
And then you get the call from Mount Carmel, do you know?
Yes, ma'am.
And then you have the police interview, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then you file your litigation.
Yes, ma'am.
Actually, that's not the right order, and it's an important question. You file your civil lawsuit before...
Object, Your Honor. May we approach?
We may approach. maybe it's a good time to take a break, because we're getting close to it, and we're gonna go to like 4:30. Let's take 10 minutes for you guys, okay? Madam, we'll call them up.
All right.
Sir, you can get comfortable there. Remember to keep your voice up when you're still under oath.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Menashe, I sustain the last objection. Your question.
Thank you. I want to go back if I can, because I couldn't find it earlier. You remember my question about what, if anything, you knew about conversations your mother had had with your sister about
Correct.
her end-of-life conditions?
Correct.
Would it refresh your recollection to see your deposition testimony as to what you said about that issue?
Sure.
May I approach?
Yes, ma'am.
Amen.
And having reviewed that from your deposition, does that reflect, or does that refresh your memory about what you said in October of 2020 about that issue?
Yes.
And at the time, fair to say that you indicated you did recall that your mother had that conversation with your sister?
Yes. It was with us kids. Yes, ma'am.
She had the conversation with you kids
Yes.
about the way that you would want to live and not want to live.
If she was ever to be in a state like that, yes, ma'am.
And I want to go back now to another question that I asked you about kind of your thoughts about what happened when your mother passed. Fair to say the next day you didn't go back to the hospital and indicate that you thought anything went wrong, right?
That's correct.
And I could ask you about every day you didn't go back, but you didn't go back and then you get the call from Mount Carmel, right?
Correct.
And fair to say that in your deposition, when you were asked about after your mom's passing, before the Mount Carmel call, at that point, did you have any concerns about the care that had been provided to your mother? You indicated, I didn't know.
I didn't know.
And we know now, too, that you didn't even know really how sick your mother was.
That's correct.
And in hindsight, when you talked about the pain that she was experiencing, that it was in her back, I remember you saying you were correct.
That's correct.
You also now know that she had liver and lung cancer.
I do know now. Yes, ma'am.
I assume whether you knew what that pain was for or not for, that seeing your mother in pain was difficult for you as her son.
Yes, ma'am.
And the prosecution has an opportunity to get up here and ask you some questions next. And so I want to ask you this. When you as a family made the decision to palliatively extubate your mother, fair to say that you didn't want her to experience any further pain?
That's correct.
Nothing further.
Redirect.
Your Honor, at this time, the state has no further questions and would
Okay.
thank Mr. Scherzinger
Sir, you're
for
excused.
being with us today.
Thank you very much. Call your next witness.
I'm sorry, I didn't stand there, I was just standing for the witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state would call Albert Belisari to the stand.
Oh, that's right, I got David. Good.
Step over here, please. Raise your right hand, please. You swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you. Please be seated and take a few seconds to make yourself. If you would be so kind as to state your name for the record and spell your name, please.
Albert Belisari, Bellisari.
Mr. Belisari, can you give that a little bit of volume? You seem to be a little soft-spoken, and we're trying to work our way through this plexiglass.
Can I turn it up or just talk louder?
Just talk louder.
My name is Albert Belisari. Spelling is Bellisari.
David, why don't you put this book on underneath there to bring that mic up a little bit to him? Any objection?
No.
Excuse me, sir.
That way you don't have to hold it.
Okay.
Just tell us your first name again.
Albert,
Okay. Hear that okay? Spluker?
Thank you. And for the record, Corinne Bucher on behalf of the state. Mr. Belisari, thank you for coming in today, first of all. Can you please tell me a little bit about yourself, where you grew up?
yeah, where I grew up, yeah, I grew up here in Columbus, Ohio, in the Milo Grogan area, which is around close to the fairgrounds, between Fifth Avenue. Went to grade school there.
Okay.
Went
And,
to Aquinas High School. there- okay.
did you have any siblings growing up?
Yeah, there were 9 siblings. There are 4 brothers and 4 sisters.
All right. And did you have a sister by the name of Joanne?
I did.
Can you tell me a little bit about Joanne?
I can tell you a lot, I don't know about a little. Joanne was, she was 6th in the line, I guess, of the 9.
And are you older or younger than her?
I'm older, approximately 10 years older. Joanne was kind of like a tomboy growing up, and then she grew up and became, she was smart in school. She was a bookkeeper for Coca-Cola, and then she finally decided she didn't want to travel, and she went to work with Graham Ford as a parts manager and service manager. She did both. I think she was Bob Graham's private assistant, and he liked her very well, and she stayed there for many years. Joanne then, she always was close to her church. I mean, we were all Catholic, whether that's good or bad, I don't know what you think, but Joanne was a very good Catholic, and she was very involved with church work. She then became a companion nun, which is kind of an old thing, but where she took vows, but not full vows, as some nuns do. She didn't take the vow of poverty because she eventually took care of my mom and dad and ended up in the house and as a property owner. But she had nuns, she always at the house. Finally, one very close, Sister Dorothy Doyle, lived with her, and they were very involved. She was very involved with church work, reading, helping. She was the Order of Good Shepherd, which they took care of abused children, and she was very, very involved. Her last work at church was developing bereavement programs for parishes, especially new parishes, where helping people deal with grief, and death and so on. And she would go in, and set up these programs. And she was, and then she did other things with the church, whatever they needed. She cooked a lot. She liked to cook. She had that Italian blood in her, I guess. But she cooked for the priests and the nuns and whatever she could do. That's the type of person she was.
Now, in 2015, you mentioned a nun by the name of Dorothy, you said?
Yeah, her name was Dorothy Doyle, and she went by Sister Dorothy.
Okay, and in 2015, was your sister living with her?
Yes.
Okay, and where was that? Where were they residing?
2100 Firestone, which is in Gulfview Woods, right off Wilson Road, close to Treview. Little addition back in there.
Okay. And on April 22nd of 2015, did you see your sister?
Yes.
Can you tell me about that day, please?
I heard she wasn't feeling well. I lived close by. I stopped to see her, to see how she was doing. And when she came to the door, she did not look very healthy. very pale, coughing, weak, very weak looking, and I encouraged her to get to the hospital, and that's what she did.
And did you accompany her to the hospital?
No, I did not. She had a ride with Sister Dorothy,
And which hospital did she go to?
Mount Carmel.
Do you know why she went to Mount Carmel?
Well, that's sort of like the family hospital. You know, we're Catholics, and it's a Catholic hospital, and we expect them to respect our beliefs. And I know there are other good hospitals, but our Catholic faith we lean towards Mount Carmel for that reason.
And did you go to the hospital that day at all on April 22nd?
No, I did not. I don't believe I did. No, I did not go. I think I called, how is she? And then they decided to keep her, and I went the next day or so, I
Okay.
believe.
So the next time you saw Joanne, was that in the hospital?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did you learn about her condition?
Well, she wasn't good. I mean, I knew she had CO, trouble breathing and exchanging carbon dioxide. That was always a problem with Joanne, and she had a serious case of arthritis. I guess it was rheumatoid arthritis, but other than that, knowing that she was weak and had a cold, they were treating her, I believe, for bronchitis and maybe trying to look into other things. I knew she wasn't well.
And at some point during her hospital stay, was she ever put on a ventilator?
Yes, she was.
And do you recall when that was, or?
Well, she went in on the 22nd. Somewhere between, I'm going to say that between the 1st and the 8th, somewhere in there. She wasn't on the ventilator right away because I remember talking with her in her room, and she, at first she couldn't talk, so she wasn't, it was like a couple days later, I went in, and she was telling me where her, I was given power of attorney and state where I could find all the paperwork and so on, and I think the hospital may have been asking for a DNR thing, and she said, I don't think I filled it out, but it might be in there, and it wasn't completed, so she really did not have one at that time, but that was the conversation, and she did not have, she wasn't intubated at that point, and I'm saying it had to be somewhere between the 1st and the 8th, as I recall, because there were 2 or 3 days where she regained her, she looked good. I thought maybe she was going to.
And you say the 1st through the 8th, is that of May
Yes, ma'am.
2015?
Yes.
Okay. So, once she was intubated, did you have conversations with any of the doctors about her prognosis?
Well, it was I think Friday, I did have a conversation. I think it was Dr. Moody.
Okay.
She had been intubated, and it looked like she was not progressing, and it looks like she was regressing, if I can use that term, and we were to know some of the members of the family. We had nieces, nephews there, most of the brothers and sisters, and Sister Dorothy as well. And I think with Sister Dorothy, maybe someone else suggested, maybe we ought to just take her off the ventilator. And I don't think that there was no unanimous vote on that. We said no, and Dr. Moody was I thought, very professional. She talked with us and asked us to wait, that she wanted a few more days. She wanted,
Just do what Dr. Moody said?
I can rephrase, Your Honor.
Rephrase.
After your conversation,
Disregard the comment about what someone said.
after having conversations with Dr. Moody about removing Joanne from the ventilator, did you and your siblings make a decision on what to do next?
Yeah, we decided that we would wait. That wasn't time to pull the ventilator.
Would you like a water?
No, I'm
Help?
fine.
You
I'm
all right?
okay.
Let me know if you change your mind.
No, I'm okay.
Okay. Go ahead, continue.
No, we decided not to do that, not to take that off.
Okay. At this point, had anyone in the hospital discussed extubating her palliatively outside that conversation?
I don't recall any conversation, and if they had it with any member of my family, they did not tell me or inform me that that was discussed.
All right. Now, I want to draw your attention to May 10th. So you were previously speaking about the 8th of May, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So May the 10th, can you tell me about what happened on May the 10th? Actually, I'm sorry, did you ever discuss the DNR status of Joanne with anyone in the hospital? Do you remember that?
I did not. I don't,
You don't
I
recall?
don't remember discussing it with anyone. It was, no.
Okay. So let's talk about the 10th. Can you please tell me about what happened on the 10th?
Well, we gathered, we all, most of us were in the room, and it didn't look good. Things were regressing. The kidneys had quit working. We were told by one of the nurses. Pulse was real low, blood pressure not readable. I couldn't tell. She was sinking, and, you know, we had, it looked like a hopeless situation to most of us, and we decided that we were going to take her off the ventilator. And I think I went to the nurse's station, and there were several people there. I think a nurse, several nurses, and the doctor. And I asked, was there any good reason why she should be on ventilator? Any reason to be on it anymore? And the doctor said no.
And do you
I
know?
remember the doctor saying no, and we said, well, the family wants you to take it off, take her out of it, take the ventilator out.
Okay, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. So you went up to the stand, the nurse's station, asked, and then you said the doctor said what?
No. No reason. My question was, is there any reason for her to continue to be on the ventilator?
Okay.
And I heard no.
And who was that doctor? Do you know who
I
that
think
doctor?
it was Dr. Husel, but, you know, I was the only doctor there, only man there. And he was, the one nurse said, he's the doctor.
Is it the gentleman that you see seated over here at the table?
I think so, ma'am. Yep.
Okay,
I think he was there. I think that was him.
all right. After that, did anything else happen?
Yeah, they immediately proceeded to the room, and I went back to the room, you know, just, you know, I knew, knowing my sister wasn't going to survive. And they came in, and we stood back, and they started taking things apart, and I don't know if I stepped out of the room, stepped back, but a nurse was giving my sister a shot. And I said, what's that? She said, oh, it's comfort medicine. Okay, I don't think anything of it. I said, well, I don't know if she's, well, I just said, okay. And then they took her off the ventilator, and she, short time later, was pronounced dead. And we gathered around and said prayers, you know, asked God to take her, and we all went home.
Did you have any other conversations with any doctors that evening?
No, I did not.
Did anyone explain what to expect when Joanne was taken off the ventilator?
No. I had no conversation with anyone.
During your time with Joanne, did you see any signs that she was uncomfortable or in pain?
No, the expression was the same. It was just, she was sinking and drifting away. I don't know if she felt pain. I don't know if a person can feel pain when all your organs are shutting down. It didn't appear to me. She wasn't screaming or writhing or agonizing, nothing. She, you could tell a person, like a person's just slipping away, just going into a deep sleep. I saw no signs of pain and visible signs.
Did you ever have to request more pain medication for her on her behalf?
Would you say that again,
Yes.
please?
Did you ever feel the need to address medical personnel and ask for medicine for your sister, pain medicine?
No, we never did. We just trusted the doctors, we trusted the hospitals, that they were doing their best, and, we just felt that, I think one time, can't you do anything else? I don't know, it was directed towards a nurse, maybe one of the sisters said that. I think I heard that one time, are you doing the best? Can you do any better? I think I heard that question, but I don't remember the answer.
All right. So after your sister passed and your family, you said prayed
Yes.
with her or around her?
Yeah, we got around the table and Catholic way.
Approximately how long after Joanne was taken off the ventilator did she pass?
Well, it was 7 years ago, so I'm thinking anywhere from 2 to 5, maybe 2 to 10. It seemed very quick. It just seemed like a matter of minutes. It was I don't think it was any more than 10 the most. Down the time we walked away and gathered around and came back, it was a very short time.
And after you left the hospital, did you speak to anyone from Mount Carmel about your sister's care at all?
No.
Did you ever receive a call from anyone from Mount Carmel after 2015?
Yeah, it was over a year. Now, this is really, we had put Joanne away, and I got a call.
And be careful, don't tell me what anyone told you, but just kind of what it was that you learned from the phone call.
I learned that I learned that she received too much comfort care, is what I was told.
And,
Too much comfort medicine?
okay. And after that, did you ever meet with any police officers?
Yes.
Did you ever meet with the prosecutor's office?
Well, I met with I think it was a phone call with the detective,
Okay.
and answered a lot of questions, as pretty much reiterated what I've tried to say today. I did, yes.
And at any point, did you or your siblings hire a civil attorney?
Yes.
Okay. Did you file a lawsuit as a result of this?
I did. We did. Yeah.
Is that still pending?
No, it was settled.
Okay. Nothing further.
Ross?
Real quick, sorry. Mr. Belisari, I'm just going to put a photo up here marked Exhibit 1A. Is that your sister Joanne?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Cross?
Yes, Ron, thank you. Good afternoon. Diane Menashe on behalf of Dr. William Husel. You said that it was settled. Mount Carmel settled your lawsuit with you, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And I want to go back, and I'm just going to ask you some questions about what you talked about and maybe some other things, but it shouldn't be too long. Go back to the call that you mentioned with Mount Carmel. Remember when they called you? I think they first called you around Christmas time in 2018. Does that sound right?
I thought it was just a little after Christmas, but
Okay.
that sounds right. About it seemed like, yeah.
Well, was there a call and then you called back
No.
and asked for another call, or you don't remember that?
I received a call and was told,
No, I don't know. I don't
"You
want to know
okay?"
what you were
I
told.
received a call.
Okay.
And then a week later, I received another call from a different doctor.
Okay. And when the different, in the second call, does January 9th of 2019 sound about right?
Yes, ma'am.
And there was a male on the phone that was talking to you, correct?
Yes.
And do you remember saying during that phone call, and I quote, "Nothing else could have been done for her"? Speaking about Joanne. Do you remember that?
I said that?
Yes. Do you remember saying that during the call on the 9th of 2019?
I think so, yes.
And then it was during that phone call that you asked if you could sue. Do you remember
No,
that?
no.
So let's go back through Joanne's hospital stay if we could. It was 18 days at Mount Carmel West. Would you agree with me on that?
Yes.
8 days in April and then 10 calendar days in May.
That's correct.
And I know that you talked about, but when she initially got to Mount Carmel, she was not in the ICU.
No.
But then on May 1st, does that sound familiar? She was intubated.
I really don't know. I'm thinking that's true. 7 years ago, I know she was intubated between the 22nd and the 8th, and I can't remember exact day it was, but she was intubated.
Sure. Joanne passed in 2015, right?
Correct.
And then you were approached by Mount Carmel in early 2019, right? Phone call.
Yes.
So almost 3.5 years later? Does that sound right? 15 to 19? And then after that, after getting the call from Mount Carmel, you then spoke to Columbus Police Department, a detective from Columbus Police Department. Do you remember doing that
Yes.
in 2019?
I remember meeting them. The dates are running together here right now, but yes, I remember meeting with them over at Police Academy, yes.
Sure. And now it's St. Patrick's Day of 2022.
Yeah.
A full 6-ish years later.
Yes.
And fair to say that you're obviously trying as hard as you can to remember dates, but a long time has passed since this incident, since your loved one was at Mount Carmel West, right?
Yes, ma'am.
6+ years. So you're not sure about May 1st. Do you know that it was actually Dr. Husel that intubated her?
I don't know.
You've never been told that?
No.
Mount Carmel West never gave you that information, nor did the prosecutor's office?
No.
But you know, I presume, and tell me if I'm wrong, that when she was intubated, it was because there was a thought that she might not make it, and it was a life-saving measure.
I don't know why they intubated. I assumed because, yeah, I hope it was a life-saving method. That's why you go there, in my opinion. She had trouble breathing. She had CO, so it didn't surprise me that they were trying, with bronchitis, that they intubated her, and it caused of concern for us.
And wasn't Sister Dorothy living with her to help her with her health problems? That's how sick she had become?
She was living with her as a place to live. They helped each other, they became friends, but that wasn't her purpose of living there.
Okay, and you don't remember telling the police that Sister Dorothy was helping her with her health issues?
No, well, I might have said that because I think Dorothy would, if, you know, the person she was, I think she would help someone, Joanne would help her. I think they were helping each other. That was a general answer. I couldn't specifically tell you that Dorothy was, I think Dorothy would, I think they, just like anybody that lived together, they looked after each other and, you know, didn't mean anything special by it.
And then, so going back to what happened at the hospital, can I presume then, if you didn't know that Dr. Husel intubated her, you didn't know that the following day, after he intubated her, he gave her vasopressors as another life-saving measure? I assume you didn't know that either?
No, did not.
And you talked about how she was getting, she being Joanne, of course, that she was getting, instead of progressively better in the final day or days, she was regressing. She was getting worse.
That's my opinion.
That was your opinion.
Yes, ma'am.
And because you saw that and you're familiar with what she looked like at her best and what she looked like at less than best, is that fair?
I've known her all my life, and I know what she looked like when she went in, and you know, yeah, she just sinking in the bed, and you can see the vital signs all regressing, going down. She wasn't waking up.
And you've used the expression, have you not, that she just, quote, she just kept getting worse as her time in the hospital went on?
I've said that.
And there was 6 of you children, is that right?
There were 9 total. Yeah, time of her death, I think 2 of them, 2 oldest passed away. So there were 7 at the time of her death, still living.
And 6 were there at the hospital?
No, 5.
5.
Yeah. I had a brother in
Oh,
Florida.
you have a brother in Florida.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So the 5 that could be there were there? And then the sister was there as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Sister Dorothy?
Yes, ma'am.
Were there other sisters there gathered as well?
Yes.
Tell us how many sisters were there?
There were 2 others.
And what were their names?
Maria Lane, she went by Maria Elena, we always call her, and Lucy.
And in addition to those sisters, so there's 3 sisters there, was there also a spiritual care or chaplain in the hospital that was spending time with you and the family?
There was Sister Dorothy, and her superior came down, like the mother of the house. She was there that night, and that Joanne passed away. She was there, yeah. So that and 2 brothers, other brothers were there, Jimmy and Johnny.
So, I don't need to hold you to the map, about 10 plus people or so, all there in support.
That's close. That's,
And you had obviously, despite the time of day, you had time to gather there, to be together?
it was late.
And
Yes,
you were all there?
yes, ma'am.
And before we talk more about the 10th, I want to go back to your conversation that you mentioned with Dr. Moody on the 8th. And Dr. Moody, you remembered her as a female doctor, did you not?
Yes, ma'am.
And that conversation with Dr. Moody took place during the day,
Yes, ma'am.
a few days before Joanne's passing.
Yes.
That conversation involved, did it not, discussions about whether the family wanted to change her code to DNRCC?
I never discussed that with any doctor, the DNR code.
Okay. So, Dr. Moody indicated that she spent 42 minutes with the family on May 8th,
Okay?
talking about options, and talking about what the family wanted to do moving forward. Would Dr. Moody have misremembered that?
No, I may have misremembered. I remember, what I do remember, and you'll forgive me if I'm wrong, if I'm mistaken, but one of the members, I wanted to pull the ventilator off. And we asked Dr. Moody, and Dr. Moody wanted us to give her more time to work with Joanne. We're not giving up. But I don't, like I say, I don't remember anything about the DNR code or anything like that.
Let me pause there about this situation with Dr. Moody and what you said Dr. Moody wanted. Isn't it true that actually Sister Dorothy, who was the companion to Joanne, but not the durable power of attorney, because that's you, was
Yes,
it not?
yes, ma'am.
That was you. Sister Dorothy said, I think it's time. And actually the rest of the family and you said, not time yet.
Correct.
Is that fair?
Correct.
And that was a few days before Joanne ultimately passed, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you had that ability to speak for Joanne, and on that day when Sister Dorothy said one thing, you said, not yet, let's see how she does through the weekend. Do you remember making that, saying that?
Yeah, I do. I think that would have been my stand. Yeah, I would have said, we're not going to do this. We want, give Joanne every chance she has to survive this. We prefer a natural death, not, as much as possible.
Sure. And then a day went by, and then the next day went by, and then that's when you saw. The doctor didn't have to come and tell you. You testified on direct that you saw her sinking. Is that right?
We saw her sinking.
You all saw, right?
Yeah, we did.
And you probably saw each other seeing it, did you not?
Yes.
And felt that power of everyone knew, and maybe you didn't even need to talk.
I talked about it because I wanted their opinions. I said, do we all agree? I'm not making this decision by myself. And we said, we all agreed. That's why I went out to the nurse's station and asked them to do that, pull the ventilator out.
And you went out to the nurse's station, and when you went out to the nurse's station, you announced who you were, right? Associated with which patient?
Yes.
Did you would you have introduced yourself as first and last name, or said
I think the nurse's station was right by the room. We walked out, and I don't remember anybody else being there, and I don't know exactly what I said. I said, on behalf of Joanne, they knew who I was talking about. I made sure of that.
And you made sure that they knew that you were the durable power of attorney to make that decision?
Yes.
And before you walked out to that nurse's station, you had fully discussed that decision with the family?
Yes.
And there was no pushback?
No.
Do you have your own knowledge that once the durable power of attorney says end the care, or pull the plug, I think is the word that you used, that the hospital nor the doctor can continue to treat that patient? Do you know that?
I didn't expect them to. No, I didn't know it, but that's understandable, yeah.
And so you knew when you made that decision and you took those steps to the nursing station that Joanne was going to be able to pass without the tube down her throat. You knew that, right?
Was there no, I didn't know that. When you take someone off the tube, there's the possibility they may open their eyes. 99%, 95% sure she was going to go, but there was still hope. We just, we waited to see, and no. And you're asking me, did I know for sure she was going to die? I can't say that.
No, I didn't ask you if you knew for sure she was going to die.
Well, would you ask me again?
You knew that the tube was going to be pulled out.
I knew the tube was going to be pulled out,
And
yes.
you knew that the tube and the ventilator was a life support saving measure, right? You knew that.
Yes.
It was keeping her alive, right?
IVs and kidneys and other things too, yes, ma'am.
All the cords that you
Yeah,
talked about, she
yeah.
was totally hooked up.
Yeah,
right?
right.
And after you walked out to the station, all the cords were disconnected and the tube was taken out of Joanne, was it not?
Yes.
And you talked about, when you were asked in your CPD interview, were you in the room, and you indicated that you were. You were in that room when that process happened, right?
Yes.
And you saw her be disconnected.
Yes, ma'am.
There was at no point in time that you didn't understand what walking out to the nursing station meant, right?
I knew what it meant. I asked him to pull the tube out, you know. We wanted her off life support, yes,
Pull the plug.
yes.
Now, you might be asked, because the prosecutor has the opportunity to stand back up and ask the questions. I know that I listened to your direct, and I know that you're a man of faith. And of course, I know you just heard that you had hope. But fair to say that no one, not a nurse or a doctor, told you that night that you should have hope.
No,
And you were asked questions about whether Joanne was in pain or not, and whether you could see her in pain. You would never want Joanne to have experienced pain while she was dying, right?
no.
Nothing further, thank you.
Redirect?
Mr. Belisari, you mentioned that you wanted to take Joanne off the ventilator for a natural death.
That's what we wanted, a
What does
natural
that mean
death.
to you? What do you mean by natural death?
That means without any outside influence. Give her, if, I felt, and we felt that she could not feel any pain, as we were talking about earlier. I felt that she was sinking, and one nurse, or somebody said, well, I think she might be dead already. I just want to let her die a natural death.
Why is that important to you?
That's what we believe as Catholics, that all of us were raised that way. That's why that there should be no outside mercy death or anything to hasten death. It's mercy killing or assisted suicide or whatever. Euphemism is not,
Sustained, hold on. Let's bring a new question on.
I'm sorry.
And I move to strike that.
Okay.
Striking the last part of this thing, I would agree, without a foundation, but, so anything mentioning mercy killing of those words, you're to disregard.
Okay.
Knowing what you know now, do you believe Joanne was given a natural death?
Objection, Your Honor.
Okay, rephrase, sustained.
Watching what you saw and being there when Joanne died, do you think she had a natural death?
No.
Nothing further.
Okay. Let me step down.
No, Your Honor, can I recross?
I can't see why. You want a sidebar?
Yes, please.
David?
said in your last answer about at the time of her death, you not thinking it was natural. You didn't report anything unusual or suspicious about her death at any point in time. And then Mount Carmel called. Is that right?
That's correct what you said.
Nothing further.
Okay, so you can step down, thank you. Do we have another witness?
We do not, Your Honor.
It's a beautiful day, right?
Hold on. I'm sorry, Judge. We have somebody, but we don't know if we can get through them today, so let's.
Why don't you guys do an assessment? Let's relax for a second. Do you guys want 10 minutes out, or you guys are good?
We have a witness here, Judge. It's up to you. I don't think we'll get it done with her today, but she can come back on Monday if we don't. I don't know if you want to divide up a witness's testimony over the weekend or not.
That's a long period of time. Any thoughts?
I say we wait till Monday, but it's
Okay.
also given us.
It's a beautiful day out there, guys. Go home. Remember the admonition, Monday morning, 9 o'clock. Mr. Pedicus? All rise. Have a great weekend, guys. Get some rest. Ms. Blucher, anything for the record?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Anything for the record, Ms. Menashe?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, I'd like everybody to adjourn in the back in about 10 minutes, let the jury clear out. We're on break right now.